Hello, I am Calvin Cherry. How is the word Nosferatu connected with the fictional Count Dracula, the historical Vlad III, and my Bram Stoker prequel, Stoker, Evolution of a Vampire? Keep watching to find out. Firstly, the vampire myth has been around since the beginning of time and is found in all cultures. For example, there is the Lamashtu in ancient Mesopotamia, the Lamia in ancient Greece, the Strigoi of Albania, the Strigoi of Romania, the Morana of Croatia, the Guaxa of Spain, the Loogaroo of France, or the Jiangshi, also known as the hopping vampire of China, just to name a few. Notice I did not mention Nosferatu, so why not? Where did the word Nosferatu come from? Emily Gerard was a Scottish writer living in the Hermannstadt region of Transylvania with her military husband from 1883 to 1885. While there, she visited around researching facts, figures, and fancies, which was first published as an essay in 1885 titled Transylvanian Superstitions, and then into a full book in 1888 known as The Land Beyond the Forest, which is the Latin translation of Transylvania. The essay mentions the word Nosferatu, where Gerard wrote, "More decidedly, evil is the Nosferatu, or vampire, in which every Romanian believes as firmly as he does in heaven or hell. There are two sorts of vampires, living and dead. The living vampire is generally the illegitimate offspring of two illegitimate persons. But even a flawless pedigree will not ensure anyone against the intrusion of a vampire into their family vault, since every person killed by a Nosferatu becomes likewise a vampire after death, and will continue to suck the blood of other innocent persons till the spirit has been exorcised by opening the grave of the suspected person and either driving a stake through the corpse or else firing a pistol shot into the coffin. To walk smoking round the grave on each anniversary of the death is also supposed to be effective in confining the vampire. In very obstinate cases of vampirism, it is recommended to cut off the head and replace it in the coffin with the mouth filled with garlic, or to extract the heart and burn it, strewing its ashes over the grave. That such remedies are often resorted to even now is a well-attested fact, and there are probably few Romanian villages where such have not taken place within memory of the inhabitants. There is likewise no Romanian village which does not count among its inhabitants some old woman, usually a midwife, versed in the precautions to be taken in order to counteract vampires, and who makes of this science a flourishing trade. Scholars have stated that Gerard erroneously used the word Nosferatu to be synonymous Romanian word for vampire, for it was not a known word from any country. It could be she misinterpreted the word nosaros, which is a Greek word meaning disease-bearing. In early 1890, Irish Lyceum theater manager and aspiring author Bram Stoker read Gerard's essay as he was researching his vampire tale. Bram took 4 pages of detailed notes from Gerard's essay, including the word Nosferatu. A lot of his notes got included directly into Professor Van Helsing's dialogue from chapter 16. Friend author, if you had met that kiss which you know of before poor Lucy died, or again last night when you open your arms to her, you would in time, when you had died, have become Nosferatu, as they call it in Eastern Europe, and would all time make more of those undeads that so have filled us with horror. Or from chapter 18, the Nosferatu do not die like the bee sting when he sting once. A sacred bullet fired into the coffin kill him so that he be true dead. As for the stake through him, we know already of its peace, or the cut off head that giveth rest. We have seen it with our eyes. Secondly, what is the connection to Vlad III? As I mentioned in my last blog, I do believe Bram Stoker took more than Vlad the Impaler's surname when he wrote his masterpiece, and based on his research, knew some detail of Vlad III's history, which was thread into the biography of Count Dracula as a man. But aside from Bram Stoker's novel, would Vlad III have any connections to the Nosferatu or undead mythology? To answer this question, let's look at several things. Number one, though Vlad III Dracula is looked upon by the Romanians as a national hero, they also commonly refer to him as a berserker, an insane, ruthless, evil, and bloodthirsty tyrant who killed an estimate of 80,000 people in his brief 45 years as a man. According to vampire folklore, these types of people became Nosferatu after death. Number two, Vlad III ordered people to be skinned, boiled, decapitated, blinded, strangled, hanged, burned, roasted, hacked, nailed, buried alive, or stabbed. Known as a sadist, he also liked to cut off the victim's nose, ears, genitals, or tongue. Though his usual go-to method, impalement, earned him the nickname Vlad Tepish, or Vlad the Impaler. It is interesting to note that this manner of death, that is by a wooden stake driven through the body, was and still is the most common method of killing a Nosferatu. Is this a mere coincidence? Number three, stories exist of Vlad III dining amidst his impaled victims. There are even woodcuts depicting various scenes, and many stories by different countries spoke of Vlad the Impaler dipping his bread in goblets of blood collected from his dying victims. Drinking human blood is the main characteristic of any vampire folklore. Number four, Vlad III was labeled as a merciless human flesh-eater and devil worshipper, especially by the Saxons and the Ottomans, causing him to be denounced by the Orthodox Christian Church. Such conditions by several different vampire superstitions believe such a human being would rise from the grave as undead. Number five, Vlad the Impaler was killed in battle December of 1476. His decapitated head was brought back to the Turkish Sultan. Some accounts state that it was paraded around on a wooden stake, while other accounts state it eventually got transferred into an oversized jar full of honey to preserve it. In any case, decapitation, as previously discussed, was a popular end of a Nosferatu's reign. Number six, Vlad III's body was believed to have been laid to rest at Strigoi Monastery on a small island. Vampire mythology believes the undead cannot cross running water and to test religious artifacts. Is this another coincidence, or did his own people truly believe Vlad the Impaler could come back as Nosferatu and thus took these precautions? And number 7, Vlad III Dracula's tomb was excavated in 1933 and found empty. Only animal bones were discovered in the hollow grave. I will leave that fact right there for you to ponder. Fast forward 100 years, I find it outrageously thrilling how the misinterpreted word Nosferatu was picked up by a Scottish writer and then reused by an Irish author with probably very little thought of the error or impact. After the international success of Dracula when published in 1897, the word Nosferatu made yet another monumental dent in our society when the silent movie Nosferatu was released by German director F.W. Murnau in 1929. Though the film gained much notoriety, the blatant exploitation of Bram Stoker's story was used without the author's widow's permission. Florence Stoker bankrupted the company, suing for copyright infringement, and won. Though all copies of the film were ordered to be destroyed, a few remained, thus allowing what has been referred to as one of the great silent masterpieces and horror movies of all time. The sheer impact the misconstrued word Nosferatu has had on pop culture is almost unmeasurable. You can spend an hour asking strangers on the street what the word means, and most of them will tell you vampire. And every horror fan would not only provide a definition, but also launch into much of the detail provided here, including the Nosferatu color remake of 1979. Finally, so how is the word Nosferatu tied to my novel? My historical fictional prequel to Dracula follows the conceptualization of Dracula. All of the research previously mentioned here and more is woven into my book. Stoker Evolution of a Vampire merges the life and times of Bram Stoker with the history of Vlad the Impaler and vampire mythology. I address many other myths, unanswered questions, and lore which have surrounded Bram Stoker, actor Henry Irving, Vlad the Impaler, and the origins of Dracula since its publication. My novel is available at all online book retail stores. And if you go into a brick and mortar store and it is not available, they will be more than glad to order it for you. Finally, if you would like a signed copy, please private message me and I will be more than happy to oblige. So some further reading. The Land Beyond the Forest, Facts, Figures, and Fancies from Transylvania, published in 1888. This is not the 1885 Transylvania Superstitions essay Bram Stoker used, but rather her full-blown book on the subject, published 3 years later. I like it because it contains plenty of maps and illustrations. It is a must for anyone that enjoys reading folklore. Dracula by Bram Stoker, 1897, the unabridged audio version performed by Susan Adams and Alexander Spencer. I have read and listened to countless versions for 43 years. This version by far is my favorite audio version. Their proper English Victorian accents match the text and period perfectly and suck you in, no pun intended. Much like Jim Dale did performing the Harry Potter books. And Dracula in visual media by my friend John Edgar Browning and Carolyn Joan Pickart, published in 2011. This is an extensive look at how Dracula has had an impact in film, television, comic books, and electronic games the last century. If you found this interesting, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so very much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.